The CEO of the CBC just testified at a Heritage Committee that CBC provides balance and tells both sides of the story. Today I'll show you the clip and then I'll tell you my side of the story. This story from Blacklocks reporter came across the Gunn Reid news desk today, which is actually just like this desk where I do all of my work. The story's behind a paywall because that's how they pay their bills at Blacklocks reporter, because they, like us, will never take a red cent from the government to do our job. So if you want to support independent journalism that I think is pretty darn great, this might be a really good investment for you. Anyway, Blacklocks' story is about an appearance by CBC's CEO yesterday at the Heritage Committee in the House of Commons, which then sent me down a bit of an auditory rabbit hole, straight to hell. I went back and listened to that entire Heritage Committee sitting, starring CBC's CEO Catherine Tait. It was just audio, so I didn't have to look at any of these people, so it wasn't that terrible. Now, Blacklocks' story flagged some of the more outrageous and out-of-touch comments made by Tait, so I thought I'd show you the best one that I found when I was listening. To set up the clip, Tait is asked about the role of the state broadcaster in the changing modern media landscape these days. Put your seatbelts on, folks. It's about to get pretentious and paternalistic. Just listen.
One of the reasons that I accepted to this wonderful job is because I believe that public broadcasting never has been more important than it is today. And when I meet with other public broadcasters in Paris or in London or by telephone to Australia, we are all facing the same challenge, which is how do we protect and defend our citizenry from this unbelievable tsunami of disinformation. And in a sense, we become a beacon for truth. And the key to your question in the notion of a public versus a state broadcaster is we need the public to feel safe, that there is that we are a beacon for that truth, and that they know that we may make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but the journalistic standards and practices state very clearly: we measure, we research, we're transparent, we weigh, we try very hard to present both sides or all sides of a particular subject. That is the nature of the public service and the mandate, and we take it very seriously.
A beacon for truth. My lord. Did you pick up on that messianic complex thing she's got going on there? Tait sees herself as some sort of protector and educator of a feeble-minded, gullible Canadian citizenry, rescuing us from our own ignorance, enlightening the savages, while Tait's network calls anyone to the right of Mao and Nazi without even thinking of it. Give me a break already. Oh, and about telling both sides of the story? What do you think out there at home? Do you think CBC presents both sides of the story? Because I can tell you with firsthand knowledge, I know they don't, and that they actually have a policy within their business. You know, can you even call what they do a business? I don't know. Anyway, they have a policy to not tell the other side of the story on certain issues. And I can show you that with real proof. And I mean that outside of my own anecdotal observation that despite the dozens of panels the CBC has convened to talk about the rebel because we did something that made them mad, they have not picked up the phone to call one of us to invite us on to the show for balance. Now, back in 2017, I did a story about how a rebel viewer had sent a letter to Esther Enkin, that's the CBC's ombudsman. Our viewer, Rob, was watching The National one night when he was struck by the lack of balance the CBC provided in a story about Lennox Island PEI. The CBC blamed the issue of the shrinking island exclusively on climate change and the rising ocean caused by climate change. Rob thought there was more to the story, like wind and other forms of erosion caused by ocean currents, and that the story lacked the obligatory other side of the story that Catherine Tait just testified is part of the CBC mandate. Now, this is the reply Enkin sent Rob. If you are asking for a response on the reasons for erosion of Lennox Island, I will ask programmers to do so. It is specific and questions whether climate change may be only one of the reasons. Please note, however, that as I have written for the last several years, I do not forward complaints asking for a response to one-sided presentations about climate change as such. The overwhelming scientific consensus is that climate change is a reality. Governments at state, provincial, and national levels are developing strategy and policy based on that reality. To ask journalists to provide alternate views for balance misunderstands the principle that CBC News and all credible news organizations are required to present a range or views depending on their relevance. To provide views that are not credible or not based in fact creates a false equivalence that is misleading. So according to the CBC, it's just not relevant to question whether or not every problem caused in the entire world is a result of climate change somehow. How's that for balance for you? Catherine Tait earns about $500,000 each and every year to not worry about ever having to compete when those of us in the private sector have to do that every single day. CBC's viewership, though, it's contracting, according to Blacklocks, down about 27%, and Tait doesn't know why, and she doesn't seem all that worried about it anyway. But I've got a theory about the contraction of the viewers. It's probably because that 1/3 of CBC's viewer base actually came to them for news instead of an echo chamber of lectures from people who think you are all just not bright enough to know the difference between fake and real news. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Hey, did you know that there's another way to get your Rebel Media fix? All of our premium content shows are available as downloadable podcasts. You can get those at therebel.media/listen or on any of your favorite podcast directories. And while you're there, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. It's a great way to help us out here at The Rebel without ever having to spend a dime.